Festive greetings and welcome to Homescreen, the most and only Christmassy product and design fintech show you're likely to see. There is one person who has cornered this extremely niche market, Tunde Balaji.
And that is Jim Safford.
On today's show, we're going to be doing things slightly differently. The episode is going to focus on our takeaways and learnings from the people and the companies that we've had the pleasure to meet over 2019. We're going to be tracing the hair growth of both Tunde and myself, and that covers both hair and beard, of course. And of course, we'll be looking at the many different hats that Tunde's been wearing and the matching garments that go with that.
Of course.
We're also going to share the predictions for 2020.
Who's going to do what trends we think we are going to see, and where we're hoping to take our own products over the coming year.
So without further ado, let's talk about the favorite learnings from the year gone. Just to kick off though, Tunde, what's that on the table in front of you, mate?
So this right here, many of the guys in the office will know, I'm not a big fan of beer.
No, you're not, are you?
Yeah, so I stuck to what I know best.
Yeah.
That's some good old Hennessy.
This is of course a pint of beer, which I did previously have a Yorkshire beer, but this is now an American, I believe. So first of all, let's talk about the chat that I had with some of the guys from TransferWise.
I like to believe that at TransferWise, obviously we use methodologies and we think about jobs to be done.
Right.
But when people ask me in interviews, how do we work at TransferWise? We work as in Agile without capital A.
Okay.
That means that we're trying to get the benefits of Agile without going super strict with the methodology.
Right.
And that's also reflected in the nature of our teams.
Okay.
So we work on this autonomous teams basis, which is usually a setup where you have a product manager, a product analyst, and a set of engineers trying to work independently to solve problems.
Yes.
So each team has the freedom in order to how you're going to approach these problems.
Yeah.
Is just putting customer first and ensuring that whatever methodology you use is for the best of the customers, which also reflects on the best for the team.
So that was Felipe from TransferWise, and we were talking a little bit about the way that Agile works at TransferWise. So Felipe looks after the borderless account team. He's a product owner for that team. And what was really interesting was, and I think this is fascinating about a company which has gone from a really small one, so like TransferWise when it kicked off, to now quite a big one. You know, they're in a load of markets. They've got a really big product. Is how they can scale Agile. And they were talking there about Agile with a small A, you know, giving them the flexibility to be able to sort of learn what they need to learn, and to only apply those practices to the teams that need them, and being able to sort of delegate between like sort of the senior leaders to down to the team innovative sort of team that actually get on with innovating. Agile, what it made me think about and what actually made me consider is they're sort of coming from two different angles. One is a big company adopting the methodology like Agile, and another one which is a small company with Agile principles becoming large, and how they sort of like approach that at different angles is really quite fascinating. So yeah, they've got me thinking about the benefits and the real sort of pleasure that it is to be building a product right now in a very small team. We're able to kind of do this sort of build, measure, learn, prototype, test on really small databases, really small numbers of people, and then get going on larger sets later on. So it's low cost, you know, it works in small batches, and the build, measure, learn thing works really well. TransferWise are doing super well at the minute. They seem to have entered a load of new markets, you know, in places like Malaysia. We're pretty interested in that whole like Southeast Asia market as well, just in general. Just places like Cambodia and Thailand have got these really sort of like blossoming tech scenes, really smart young people going about making products for really underbanked people, and in really sort of mobile centric, right, really well connected sort of digital environments. And then they've also got the other big news from the year, which was that they partnered up with Go Cardless, and they were providing the ability to do the sort of like business banking play for sort of big international currency conversion on recurring payments. The ability to do that sort of thing is really probably gonna, I think, have a big influence on the way that business is conducted, you know, similar to the way that Stripe operates. You know, they've got a big corner of that market. TransferWise and Gokada just seem like a really nice fit for kind of taking that abroad and doing the cross-border.
Those guys are pretty cool. Big fan of their design quite personally as well. So I'm of Nigerian descent, and my mom, sends money back home quite a bit, and I've seen her do this, for as long as I've been alive. And earlier days before, TransferWise came and saved us. Western Union was, where we'd all head to, and that was just quite a clunky, laborious process. So to see TransferWise actually just solve the problem of annoying reparation.
And even the way that they've designed it, in order to allow these international processes to be visualized. It's a super really nice process. So what do they do when they're sending money abroad? They've got this nice graphic thing.
They've got this really cool illustration, and it's something, if you've been a fan of the show, you see me harp on about all the time. Rembrandt's my spirit animal, so I'm a bit of a artiste at heart. So to see all of these really sort of cool visual cues make their way into sort of products makes me feel really happy, and it also helps the users get a much better view of what's going on as well. So as we said, this small animation, and it's not that big of a deal, but it is in the same place. Something's happening, and you need to let someone know that something's happening. Without sort of giving you a loading screen, without not telling you anything. What they do instead is they basically just have the money moving from one side of the globe to the other, and it's just something that's really simple. It gives the user an indication that something's happening as well, and it's just pleasant.
Yeah, it's a neat little visual cue, isn't it? And they've also got other examples of that in the app as well, with their card freeze, where there's a literal. It's quite good that we're on a Christmas episode, isn't it? Because the guy steps out, he's got his scarf on, he's got his hat on, and he will visibly shiver when you've got the card freeze going on. And there's this neat little transaction between sort of the user on the one hand who's seeing this, and then on the other hand, the recognition that something has happened in the back end of a TransferWise app. So what were you up to? What were you most enjoying this year from a design perspective?
If I was to pick one, probably cover. Big shout out to Blake. Let's show some of our episode with Blake. Another piece of visual greatness that I saw on that page was the number plate input form. Once again, back to good old Newton Norman heuristics. This guy talks about matching the match between system and real world, and I think for me that was really cool, because even the font you use is very much reflective on number plates.
It's the font.
Yeah, it is the actual font. So big fan of how you guys have made it feel as lifelike as possible. I just wanted to take my hats off to you guys on that one as well. And so that was our talk with Blake, and personally, big fan of Blake. Hey, bro. And firstly, he's actually just, from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong, he's pretty young. Me and him, I think, are the same age, around 26, 27. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he already heads up the team over at Cover, and it's a small team, but does a lot of great work there. On top of that, just loads of small, delightful factors. And the reason I keep harping on about this is that half the job is solving the problem, making sure it works. The other half is getting the user to actually connect with it, and that's so much more than just elements on the screen. It's behavioral economics, it's psychology, it's just making the user feel good, and that goes into color psychology too. And I think what these guys do is just straight small things. For example, so when you are entering your number plate to try and sign your car up for travel insurance, the input form is a number plate. Small, but it's pleasant. It stands out. It's something that will stay with you when you leave the app. In our conversation, we talked about a particular part of their journey where there's a lot of fallout, and they basically just have an arrow to their support icon that launches a supports chat from there. Just little things like that to kind of prompt users into actually taking action at points where they know users find themselves very confused. So for me,
that's interesting as well, because on the one hand, we've got this we've seen examples of TransferWise doing this amazing motion graphics stuff, and really, really cool. And then, but the other converse side of that is that what's going on with Cover is subtle. It's neat. It's sort of very small mental pushes towards good behaviors, rather than the sort of big garish outlandish sort of when we're thinking about TransferWise building a little animation, that's going to take a 2-week design sprint and a 2-week fucking development sprint as well. There's going to be the whole side of that to bear in mind. So it's sort of a the little cues when you're a small team, you're trying to move quickly as well. Maybe you don't have the time to build big stuff.
And
That's
on top
great.
of that, it's also, so there's a book that me and Will Jones, head of design, talked about here, and it's a book, and I forgot the name, but it basically says that not every design solution is a new sort of interface, and it can be something as small as just copy change, or something as small as just, prompts to something, an element on the page. It doesn't have to be this, new elaborate, they could have got to that place and realized, hey, we're having a lot of drop off at this point, and then all of a sudden, hey, let's build out this new support system, and you waste weeks and weeks of sprint work on that, only to realize that all you needed to do was pump them towards this thing, make it a bit more obvious. So I think for me, it's all these small little cues that make things a bit more stand out. So yeah, big fan of Cover, big fan of Blake, big fan of the insurance space as well. So we've had Honcho on, me and Will Jones of Dissecting Roots as well. So big fan of what's going on there, and I think later on we'll go into our 2020 predictions, but I think that's something I'm excited about.
But an honourable mention there to Honcho as well, because when they're doing this really cool work around actually like gathering the information. So like the ability to get your sort of data into the platform via like character recognition software, and it's always embedded within this sort of like nicely designed frame. There's sort of like this beautiful marriage of like a product thing and a design thing. Yeah. And that's what we like here. Shout out to those guys, Tom and the rest. So we had Moneycardo on a few weeks ago, and we were talking a little bit about their relationship with OpenWorks. OpenWorks are an API provider. They work mainly with the CMA9, the open banking regulated banks. And they are kind of working towards providing access to those APIs, even though they can be a bit shoddy at times. But they've got the access to those and helping companies like Moneycardo, real small companies, to access like these bits of banking data. So let's take a look at the discussion that we had there.
When we did the research, like the primary interviews at the start of the product development process, and we talked to people about the biggest problems they had managing their money on holiday. And what came out of it was there's some financial decision making which is at issue, but mainly it's a social problem, which is I paid for an Airbnb, I'm out of pocket for £200 and I'm too awkward to ask my friends about it. So yeah, it's a financial solution to a social problem. And what we wanted to do then is have to make as much of it handled by the app as possible, so the requesting the payment, the verification of payment, to avoid, because what people really hate is having to say, Jim, it's been 2 months and you haven't paid me back. Here are my bank details.
2 months.
No one wants that conversation.
So the thing that hit me about that was that this is a great partnership between two really cool companies, and that they both kind of care about what's going on in the social conscience. They've got, they care about the world. They've got these sort of ambitions to help people in that sort of way. But also, more specifically, it's sort of like these are small operations and these have burdens that they have to deal with. Ollie from OpenWorks is primarily concerned with the pipes, the back end stuff. And what he does is great because he allows companies like the other Ollies from Moneycardo to get on with what they want to do, which is solving the customer problem, the user problem of being able to split their bills on holiday. Moneycardo is a very small operation. It's 2 guys, and what they do is they have an app which allows you to sort of split up the way that you're spending your money with your friends on holiday. So, if producer Hannah was to go to Sweden, for example, she'd be able to take her transactions from that and split them up into 3 with her other friends. And it's a really nice way of being able to make that work. Ollie and Ollie also seem to really genuinely get on. I think that came through quite nicely from the episode. They're really good guys and they got on quite well, which is really fun. And it seemed important for a partnership sort of basis. You can't have the sort of thing where it just doesn't work. And even a few months ago, it's back in February, 11FS had this like Valentine's Day partnerships thing, and there was this big old thing about like how you've got to work together and how that relationship works. These guys genuinely like it. Without the sort of like shared vision that they need to share, then it can't really work as a partnership. That seems to be the vibe that we get in. But the interesting thing there is, and I think it's really interesting, is that this isn't something which is limited just to fintechs. It's sort of the kind of thing which is basically banks and fintechs can partner equally well as well. You just need to be kind of aware of what the roles are. So like there's this little picture, and I think we'll post it. What the fintechs need to try and do is to articulate the value proposition, work it out. differentiate the regulatory prowess. So like be able to use regulation to their advantage and to move quickly. Be prepared to be well networked and sort of to know where your customers are. A really good example is the two Ollies who are really well networked, and build a business case. And the banks are going to do things like a network for their fintechs. They're going to get a really good operational model. They're going to assess fintech engagement strategies, so how they can actually speak to these people, and also manage talent and architecture within their business to allow it. So like they're sort of like you have, and this is an EY picture, just to credit it correctly, I think. But that seems to make sense, like if you understand what your role is and where you have to be, and then it seems like it's a really neat way of being able to work together. And then just final one on this, and it's sort of the way that they were testing. They're both small companies, both really placed a high value on qualitative testing. You've done a fair amount this year, and I think we've both found a load of value in being able to actually speak to users about how they're interacting with the product. And that was really nice to hear, that it's not just, especially the week before when I'd just been listening to about how big data was the big thing and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just sitting there with my English degree, like how the hell am I going to do a big data? Can someone send the big data please? and then sort of like, how can I do that? But then these guys are sitting there and saying, we can actually speak to users and figuring out how to do stuff, which is really, really cool, I think.
And that's something we had Clouston on talking about.
Yeah, of course.
How we switched to lean UX and talking about our workshops and how it's a multidisciplinary approach. We're getting people from the sales team who work with the customers, and they big up our sales team. Those guys have given us great insights that really helped us go far. So, like you said, qualitative data is super important, and it's something we've benefited greatly from our side as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So in the next part, we're going to talk a little bit about our predictions for 2020, what we're really excited about seeing from a product perspective and from a design perspective. And we'll kick it off by talking about the sort of what I'm really excited about, which is the way that big tech's going to evolve. We've seen over the past few weeks the way that it's evolving from Apple's perspective. Google have just announced that they're going into partnership with Citi and Stanford Credit Union, I believe they're called, to provide sort of like the presentation layer on top of a lot of these sort of back-end processes, which the big banks are doing. It seems potentially a little bit naive to just think that the tech stacks of these old banks are going to be able to, that the presentation layers are going to
seamlessly fit.
Yeah, exactly. But like Apple Card, for example, we've seen the way that product operates. It's really, really neat.
Yeah.
It's a really nice product and super well designed. And they've got a big sort of USP, which is the sort of the fees play. So we're going to have a quick look at the way that works. So here we've got this like sort of progress wheel where you can see the way that sort of like the dial dictates how much you pay. It goes back up to the top, and then you sort of slide it along, and you can decide either by entering via the characters or via the slider exactly what you're going to pay off your Apple credit card bill. It's a really neat sort of solution to the way that you generate payment. I've personally never seen it. And then you sort of see like the way that the card changes colors as well. It's quite a neat sort of behavioral thing to say, oh, you're in the pink. That whole thing, which I think is really fun. So there's a big sort of play towards Apple Card. It's clean, it's really nicely designed. But what seems interesting about that is that they're more interested in the way that sort of the value proposition design is going to sort of work from a UX perspective. How are they going to be interested in the stuff that's actually being, put in front of the users rather than the rates? It's a little bit confusing to see how that's going to work from their perspective, because like, people in America love good rates. They love credit. They love all that gear. And but I guess what they're going to focus on right now is getting the UX nailed. And then they've got enough money to cash to burn through it all, and just to figure out the rest later on. And the newest news we've got, which was that Google's just opened up checking accounts in the US, and they've got sort of like this relationship with Stanford Credit. They've just got this new relationship with Stanford Federal Credit Union.
Got there in the end.
Yeah, we got there. And then there's this new product they've released called Cache at the minute, which is just sort of like the code name for it. But the idea there is that they're going to leave the back ends very much to itself, and then just focus on the front end, just a presentation layer play, and then just sort of be interested in banking data. They're not interested in how much money is going through the balance sheets. They're more interested in the way that sort of information is processed through Google, which makes sense, I guess. And so that's why I'm interested to see how those feature sets are going to look and behave. At the minute, it sort of seems more sort of, we're going to build a thing for current Google users or current Apple users, or in India, current WhatsApp users, and that kind of thing. But to see how that develops after that stage is going to be interesting, because they're going to have to innovate if they want to take over, companies like Chime over there in the States and stuff, who are doing really cool stuff.
Sweet.
And you're interested in stuff that's going on?
So for me, voice user interface, I think that's like really cool for me.
Oh, yeah.
We know what we're seeing with the likes of Alexa, Google Home. These are things that are making big strides, and we're seeing a lot of usage in those with those products. So I don't know, I might be hopefully wishing that at some point, I can pay with my Google Home or my Alexa. But I think there is something to be said there. And we've even seen UBS recently partner with Amazon on a product called Ask UBS, just to make that process a lot more smoother. I think, when we're looking at what, mobile and just sort of like touch user interface has done, I think voice is that next step in making that process a whole lot more seamless as well. Yeah. So, I'm excited about that. What else? To get back into my artiste bag, my Basquiat's bag. I think with 5G coming, what we're going to see now is complex animations becoming a lot more easier to like push through. There's a whole load of products that you'll find out on Product Hunt every day that just making it easier for designers to kind of turn their animations into code as well. So in terms of the data requirements for it, and in terms of the complexity for designers, it's all, we're reducing that barrier. So we're going to see like really nice, rich, complex animations come through as well, and just motion design as well. So what I've seen recently as well is that Dribbble have put out their design survey, their global design survey, and amongst the number one with 33% of designers' skills that they want to learn is motion design. And I think what's really cool.
Are you one of those?
I am definitely one of those. I will be motion designing next year. But I think what's really cool that we're seeing as well from a design perspective, like I said, half the job is getting this problem solved. And I think year by year we're dipping our toes more into sort of like the visual artist neck of the woods. So whereas before illustrations wouldn't have been a thing that web designer or app designer would have needed to do, and now it's a given. How dare you not have cool illustrations and now cool animations?
As we've seen from like the old TransferWise and stuff like that.
Yeah, Money do some great stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, pick up Joe Allison. Thanks for finally coming on.
Shame you were there, man.
Heartbreaking. We'll go grab coffee at some point, Joe. We're tending more into these sort of like really visual, artistic neck of the woods when it comes to design. So for me, I think that next step is motion, and I'm excited to see what we're going to do there. I trust the community to really blow that out of the park. But I'm excited.
For sure.
So design systems is something like that's actually just taking over the narrative for I think the latter half of the year in terms of the design community. It's just made life so much more easier. It's something that we've been hearing whispers around, but the big guys, Adobe XD, Figma, even Sketch, are kind of getting to this place where they realize that they now need to make their design elements, the elements that we design on these platforms, a lot more, think of them more as components that we're going to export to designers. So now what we're seeing now is these like really responsive components that you can build on these platforms that just make it a whole lot more easier to firstly quickly prototype, and also spend more time just focusing on new things as well. Because if you're spending less time sort of building out these buttons and these elements, you can now spend more time focusing on, how do I, push this design to the next level, instead of, like I said, getting yourself bogged down in what you've already built before. So I think design systems, really cool. Really going to see a lot more next year, and exciting times ahead.
And a nice combination between the sort of like the tech side, where the big banks and the big fintechs, the big tech companies coming together, and also the design side is the diversification of different fintech offerings. So the idea here being that there are a lovely set of like really, really intelligent services we've got, especially here in the UK. Companies like Monzo and Revolut are really starting to spread their sort of their wings and fly into different areas. We've just recently seen like the Monzo have just recently announced a loans product, which we're going to take a look at now. So if you've got this sort of like series of sliders, which will come up and show you how much money we want to borrow, and then how long it's going to take us to repay it. This sort of like real good overview of how long it's going to, what the exact requirements we're going to need to do to pay, and the rate and APR. And then we can sort of pick our repayment date below there, slide those to our heart's content, and then review that sort of loan. This is a kind of list of agreements. It was sort of brushed over with a plume, as you can see. And then this sort of document, it's not the most neat. It's not kind of what we're used to seeing from Monzo, but it's sort of like it's got the information there. It's sort of separated a little bit by those blocks. And then we can sort of continue, see this nice design, wait to withdraw. You can see that user just went straight. It just went straight over the top. And then agreed by confirming exactly what they're going to borrow, and then strong customer authentication straight up there with the 4 code, all done. It's quite early on this particular product at the minute. They're sort of like really figuring out some of that stuff, but yeah, we've got this sort of nice loan application. And the important thing is that Monzo now, they're moving into different products. They've got loans coming in, and presumably, I've not seen any proof that it's not on there, but this must be going straight through their loan book. Like, they did have a sort of like an approach of partnering with companies like Oat North or whatever to provide sort of like cash wrapped ISAs and things, but this has no branding on it. It's got nothing. So, hey, we'll have to see what's going on.
And even on that note, as you said, more products are more brands sort of diversifying their products. I got to once again put my neck out for the insurance guys, because I think they're doing some good stuff over there as well. Speaking to Blake, talking about how they're going to include more offerings in their insurance space as well. And I think the task for those guys would be, how do you make all of these various different insurance offerings, which on their own could actually just be like, you could actually just have an app for travel insurance, car insurance, and whatnot. And we may see them do that, who knows, but how do you make that feel like one whole coherent system under one brand? So I think that's what's exciting for me as well, to see like where that space goes and how many more offerings, what can we do, what problems can we solve in that insurance space as well. So yeah, excited for that as well. Exactly,
and to see all those things in one place as well. Like the big thing for me in terms of the way that sort of these ecosystem plays are going to work is that stuff like Monzo and Revolut, they're going to be able to provide not only access to insurance products, but also to things like savings accounts, mortgages. You can all see the credit cards. You can see them all in one place. And I think the thing that stopped them from doing that this year has been access to really good APIs. So like the fact that the big banks have just really not kicked on with that, unfortunately. But this year coming, regulatory changes coming, they'll be forced to sort of get their act together and then sort themselves out with really cool sort of improvements to the product. So yeah, just keep yourself an eye out on all of those different ranges of products. And the fintech should do really well here because they've got superior UX. Their design language is amazing. They've got this really, really smart interface, and they've got a really loyal sort of fan base.
Yeah, definitely.
People who really care about the way that the products are shaping and the way that they're coming together. So yeah, that's one thing I'm really fascinated by, is to see how these fintechs in the UK especially develop and broaden their horizons, and also if this marketplace play really comes into effect next year. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works. So I guess that sort of wraps up what we're thinking prediction-wise. Tunde, what are you looking forward to doing next year, 2020, from a design perspective?
Like I said, design systems. I think I spent most of this year really getting on my developers' nerves. Sorry, Martin. We just are back and forth again, like I said, over things not being as seamless in the developer handover. So, I'm excited about learning design systems. Like I said, building out the toolkit as well, motion design, and just, more exciting stuff to see in the community as well. And just, more exciting stuff with Homescreen as well. Looking to get more guests, maybe expand out a little bit as well, slightly outside of the fintech. See who else we can talk to and learn more from as well. So we're excited.
Definitely, for sure. And for me, it's all about the panel project that I'm working on at the minute. We want to see how we can change user testing, what we can make user testing look like for bankers and fintech people in the UK. How can we help people to get feedback on their products and the way that they're building stuff, and what a good product looks like. We've spent a lot of time just getting the fundamental basics in place. I have anyway, of how a product works. So next year for me is kicking on, really developing a really good product and getting my act together, I guess.
Sweet.
So that's the big thing. So that's it kind of for today's special episode.
So yeah, that's, wow. It's been an emotional year. What can I say? Firstly, before we sign out, we've got to say big thanks to the guys behind the screens that you don't really see. Edgar, Hannah, Tom Hards. Got to give a big shout out, of course, to our #1 fan, Kareem.
Yeah. From all of us at 11FS Pulse, we want to wish you an extraordinarily Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll see you after the holidays for a new year where we're going to kick it right up and go very, very big.
Going ham next year, guys. Take care. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.